How's it going, guys? I've got some good news to share with you. Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 have been re-released on the Nintendo Switch 2, and it is amazing! You can buy the games both physically and digitally, and the physical version is $70 with both games included. And, you know, I forgot how good these games were. Like, I legitimately forgot that these were some of the best 3D platformers ever created until I started playing them again. So let's talk about it. Hello and welcome. My name is Wolfy. You're watching Less Than a Cake. And today we're talking about Mario Galaxy. And if it isn't obvious, I am over here in Rosalina's observatory, kind of hitching a ride back to my own little space island. But yeah, she was kind enough to take me from the Mushroom Kingdom out of there so that we could talk about the Mario Galaxy games because they're awesome. Believe it or not, it has been a very long time since those games came out. They came out in 2007 for the first one, and then I think it was like 2010 for the second one. Now I did play the second one first. That's because I actually got my Wii much later in the generation than anybody else. Everybody got theirs, you know, first couple years. I got mine towards the end of its life. I was able to at least get like Skyward Swords and stuff though, in a timely manner. Digressing, I played Mario Galaxy 2 first, and then went back for the first one. And I remember being slightly disappointed that it wasn't like Mario 64. But I remember having a really good time with the platforming, finding it a decent challenge, and the amount of content in the game actually being quite nice. At the time, I thought that the waggle control was a little weird, and that the nunchuck was actually very useful. But my main complaints all kind of boiled down to the Wii being the Wii. And at 400p, really the original Mario Galaxy does not do any justice to what this game truly can look like. But despite those flaws, I powered through 100% of the games. And back in the Wii U generation, I ended up playing through them again and 100%ing them again. So despite not being my favorite 3D Mario games, they still left a big enough impression that I was willing to hook up the light bar to my Wii U. From then, I never relaunched them because I think I sold the games at some point or lost them. There were a lot of moves in between then and then, and I really wouldn't have sold them if yeah, I don't know. Point is, unfortunately, I no longer have those games in my possession. But now I do, because, you know, all these years later, it's back in 4K on the Switch 2. And you can also play it on the Switch 1, but that's at 1080p. And I gotta say, the resolution bump and the additional work they did actually do make these games look and feel better than ever before. Now, the process of getting this game for me was a little bit less straightforward than I would have wanted it to be. My original plan was to pick it up at retail when it launched, because realistically, I haven't had to pre-order a game in so long that I thought I could just walk in my local Target and it would be there for me. Unfortunately, my local Target did not have it. And then I went across the street to the Best Buy, and the Best Buy also was sold out, which is weird because I did get EK Bonanza day one from them. Target did say that they didn't get shipment at that point. So there might be something wrong with Target in general. I'm not sure. Unfortunately, I had to order it online. And in the process of ordering it, it took 2 days via Amazon to be delivered. Now, I did pay the full $70 retail price, but I did have a $25 gift voucher on Amazon, so I was able to at least take it down a little tiny bit. So the blow wasn't that bad for me personally, but $70 is a lot for two games that released, you know, a long time ago, and one of which has been featured in a re-release recently, the Mario 3D All-Stars Collection. That being said, this re-release is actually a little bit nicer than the Mario 3D All-Stars Collection in the sense that it's coded a little bit differently, and it does have the 4K textures and everything, which is nice to have, especially for a game that is as old as Mario Galaxy. Unlike the 3D Mario All-Star Collection, the games actually show up on your home screen. There is no separate menu. And you can at any point access the music to the games by pressing the top corner at the top menu area to actually experience the music side of these games, which is really nice because they are orchestral, they are beautiful. The Rosalina's observatory has one of the like prettiest themes I've ever heard in a video game. Somebody said that we're all getting married to that, and I was like, you know what? It would work as procession music. Point is, you have access to the music, you have access to both games at all times, and you just use the normal Switch menu, which I actually prefer this method as opposed to the sub menu entering the game thing that you do with the 3D All-Star Collection. Now, once you plug it into your Switch 2 though, there is an update for both games that will download the additional textures for the 4K. It did take about 30-ish minutes, and I do have my Switch 2 wired, so that might have contributed to why it was pretty fast, but there is an additional download if you are plugging this into a Switch 2. It's not required to run, but it is recommended, or else you're not going to get the full effect. Now, upon actually launching the game, I saw Nintendo's first real challenge about porting this game, and that is Wii controls and menus. So, for those of you who never played the Wii had pointer controls for accessing menus. You would point and click on the things that you wanted. Hilariously, with the Switch 2, they could have added mouse controls, and that should have been a one-to-one comparison. But then you wouldn't have gotten the waggle controls, which was the other thing that they shoehorned into this game. You would wiggle the Wii remote, and Mario would just start spinning. Now, despite that, I don't know how I didn't get dizzy doing that. What the heck? Is my brain broken? Am I that VR broken that I can do stuff like that? What the heck? As you can see, this would pose a bit of a challenge for the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch 2, which definitely do not have pointer controls. Of course, as I mentioned, they could have added mouse controls to the Switch 2, and that could have worked, but unfortunately, that was not the direction that they went. Instead, they went with IMU tracking. Now, what are IMUs? Well, it's essentially a way of tracking internal data, such as gyroscopic, tilt, etc., to approximate movement. The trackers I use are Vive Tracker Ultimates, which have a combination of IMU and visual tracking mask to do this. Whenever they get lost, they just kind of track themselves back into place. And if there are other trackers such as the Slime VR trackers and the Mocappy trackers that just use IMU data. IMUs are kind of susceptible to drift because all they really know is what's happening to them, and they're just kind of guessing. That being said, the Switch 2 did a better job of approximating that data than the Switch 1 did. In fact, I did find myself having to reset frequently, but I never felt like after I reset the calibration, the pointer was off from what I was intending to do with it. Heck, even the tilt levels, which are generally frustrating on the Wii, are equally frustrating on the Switch, but not more frustrating, which is kind of the important part. So the menus do have to be navigated with pointer controls, which can be done by holding your Joy-Con up and then pressing the shoulder button, and that will show you the cursor, and then you can use the tilt of the controller to actually move it around. This actually doesn't feel bad. In fact, in many ways, it feels perfectly adequate. And instead of having to, wiggle your controller to get Mario to spin, you can now press the Y button and he will also spin. So it does remove one gesture. Granted, you can still wiggle to spin. So if you do want to play in a classic way, you can. And if you want to play in a slightly more modern, less waggly way, you can. They did actually think about portable play. And they added those features into the touchscreen, which is actually such a natural thing to do that I'm surprised I didn't even think about it. There's also a way of using the gyro on the Pro Controller to work as your mouse cursor, but I did find that the most comfortable way to play is actually take your Joy-Cons off the Switch and use them just like the Wii Remote and Nunchucks did back in the day. In fact, in many ways, I actually felt that that was a very realistic recreation of that playstyle. We're now here in the engine room because things are about to get technical. Let's talk about the actual technical side of this re-release. So something that Nintendo wasn't really forthcoming with is how much work they actually did to bring this game back from 480p. They undersold it. They not only up-res the game, but they updated the textures. Now, what's really funny is there are a couple of places where things do get a little bit buggy. There's this one that involves a tree where you're standing at the top of the tree and light's supposed to be beaming through it, and it looks horrendous in Mario Galaxy 2. In Mario Galaxy 1, I noticed that as you were swimming through the water would sometimes lower the resolution down to what I think was 1080p, but I can't really confirm because it was just pretty bad. But then everywhere else, this game is 4K, and it's 4K 60, which is nice. Like on my MSI OLED monitor, it looked good. Like this game looks downright good. A combination of the art style, plus the updated resolution, plus the updated textures, makes it so that this feels like a modern game. In fact, the only places that I could see that it wasn't a modern game were in the models. And here's the crazy thing, I wouldn't have been able to see it if it weren't for the fact that I work on this. Because I work with 3D models and I'm used to looking at extremely high poly models, I can tell when something has less faces. And surprisingly, I was able to see, specifically on Mario and specific deformations, that he probably could have used an updated model with this game release. But I don't know how many people are actually going to see that. Now, from a technical side, this game does run pretty flawlessly. It runs 60 frames per second locked. I did create one lag spike in the entire time that I've played it, and it was in Mario Galaxy 2. It involved Yoshi, and specifically like hitting an enemy like way too many times. I'm not sure how I did it, but I wasn't able to recreate it for the sake of B-roll. So yeah, you're not gonna get to see me do it, but I was able to do it once. That being said, most of the time the game just runs, it runs well, and it looks good, aside from a few minor visual glitches. But what about emulating and modding it? Actually, that's a good point. Emulation could actually get you a very similar result to this. And in many ways, you could use your mouse as your pointer controls. But that is discrediting the fact that this is a game that you could take on a portable system by Nintendo and have a licensed game. Now, I do understand that you could make it look visually the same or better through mods, but I also have to acknowledge that obtaining a legal copy of this game and not just pirating it is a lot easier said than done. I know how much effort it takes to actually get these games ripped, and I know for a fact that a lot of people who rip games are not doing it. So while it would be an option to try to get a similar effect, the fact that it exists first party does make it so that I really don't see the reason to put in the effort. So then that brings me to the most important question of all in this video. Which is better, Mario Galaxy 1 or Mario Galaxy 2? And here's the thing about these games. They're both good in their own right. Mario Galaxy 1 feels more of a spiritual successor to Mario 64, and Mario Galaxy 2 would eventually become the future of the more streamlined 3D Mario games. 3D Mario World and Land both feel at home with Mario Galaxy 2 within that anthology. But Mario Galaxy 1 would feel better connected to Odyssey. And so in many ways, it really comes down to what you prefer. Do you prefer tighter platforming, quicker levels, or more sprawled out levels that have slightly more branching paths? Granted, Mario Galaxy 1 never truly got to the full branching paths of Mario Sunshine, Mario Odyssey, or Mario 64, but it still is a little bit more open than its sequel game, Mario Galaxy 2. Which then brings us to the most important point. Is it worth the money? Here's the question. Have you played these games before? Are you a fan of 3D platformers? Do you want to switch to? These are the questions I would ask anybody. If you want to switch to and are a fan of 3D platformers, the answer is yes. These are two of the best 3D platformers ever created. They have scored the highest on Metacritic, and honestly, they're still amazing. They hold up incredibly well, and the new 4K textures and visuals look good, to the point that the game doesn't even feel dated anymore. In fact, the only remnants of dated tech are the Wii implementations, that if they would have gotten rid of, this game could have literally passed off as a brand new game in today's day and age. Digressing a little bit here, there are a couple people where it's not going to be as worthwhile to them. People who have a skilled base for emulation are not going to be as happy with this game as, say, someone who isn't, or someone who just doesn't have the time for it. regardless, this is the best way to play these games in a modern era because you don't have to pull out a Wii, you don't have to pull out RCA cables, you don't have to hook up the sensor bar, you just put it into your Switch and you go. And overall, I consider it worth it for that fact alone. Now, if you did want to buy each game separately, you could do that. I think it's $40 each on the eShop, and there's probably a small chance that they might even go on sale at some point if Nintendo decides to run a flash sale. Granted, nothing's saying that they will do that, and they rarely do that in the first place, so I would hold my breath. Granted, at $70, you can get both games, which gives you about a $10 discount on it, and I do consider that to be the package that I consider worth it. That's as a collector and a fan of these games. Believe it or not, my third time through, I have become a bigger fan of them than on either of my previous playthroughs. And that might have something to do with the Switch too, because, you know, 4K, 1080p on the Switch 1. Those two things probably do contribute to a little bit of enjoyment, especially because both of those games came out during the beginning of the HD era, and they were in HD. And then there was also the RCA cables and that stuff. So yeah, let's just say I enjoyed it more than I've ever enjoyed it before. So it is to some people and will not be for others. It really is up to you to decide. But that is where I'm ending this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, consider giving it a like, maybe comment, subscribe. And I would like to hear down below, are you playing Mario Galaxy 1 and 2? Are you waiting for a different game? Are you playing one of the 5 other 3D platformers that is currently out to this year? I'm playing all 5 of them, okay? But I'm ending this video so that I can play more Mario Galaxy 2. I'll see you next time. Wolfy, out.